Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to season 2 of My Life as a Typo. I am Dawid, and I am actually beyond thrilled to introduce my guest today, Jeremy Schneider. He is the founder of Personal Finance Club and Nectarine, and his really impressive and juicy tagline is retired at 36. He's a transparent millionaire, and I call him the purveyor of daily money and investing tips. So, joining us on this very, very special day is Jeremy from San Diego. Hi, Jeremy.
Hi, David. Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, today's actually a very, very special day. Do you know what day it is?
No,
It's the day that I get to interview you, and I'm a big fan of yours.
I was like with the 15th of January. Am I forgetting some sort of horrific
So I
historical
had to look.
tragedy or something?
No, no, no. So it's actually like national. Well, it is Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday, officially, I think today. But it's also
Okay.
um, we don't celebrate it today. I think we celebrate it next week, right? Um, but also like National Hat Day and National Bagel Day and National Pothole Day. Like if you go to those websites, it tells you all the holidays. So every day is an important day for someone or
It
something,
is
right?
National Bagel Day. That's amazing.
Yeah, so I gotta run first, and then I can have my half bagel. So back to you because you're the star of the show today. I just wanted to first of all thank you for the purpose and the mission that you are here on Earth for, because it is something that resonates with anybody who works or doesn't work. Because whether you have employment or you're unemployed, money is at the core of your existence. So talk to me about like when people ask you what you do. I know that's kind of a very vague question, but like where do you tend to start?
I'd say I'm a personal finance educator.
Mm,
I think we have math teachers and science teachers and social studies teachers and everything else in our American high school system, but you don't find traditional, school age teachers who say that they're a personal finance teacher. That isn't really a like core subject.
mm,
Yet the whole, you know, there are probably many points of education, but one important one is to make a living and to be able to support yourself and your family as you become an adult. And that the metric by which we measure that living and run our entire lives is money. And that's not taught at all in most schools. And when
yeah.
it is taught, it's getting better and better. But even now, it's like oftentimes like a part of a semester in one class or something, when it should almost be like every single year we're talking about it. And so we found ourselves where we have these educated adults, 20s, 30s, 40s, and beyond, who can make a living, but can't just don't know the best practices of money. And so now I've found a niche where I'm like, okay, like this is a passion of mine. I really like it. I have a lot of knowledge about it, so I'm just going to teach it on the internet. And here we are.
Mm-mm. And before you were an Instagram superstar, that's how I learned of you. What preceded that? What was the how did you make your money before Instagram, before what you're doing now?
Yeah, by education, I'm a computer programmer. I went to school when I was a kid, 17. I was in college and I just really liked computer science and started studying it. I turned down a job offer from Microsoft to be a computer, software engineer out of college, and instead decided to start my own company. I had no clue what I was doing. I was a 22-year-old idiot, but I just was a very stubborn 22-year-old idiot who wouldn't give up. And, stubborn idiots over time eventually find success like I did. So I sold my company when I was 34, 35 for just over $5 million. My share after taxes was about $2 million, which is a lot of money, but it's not like you could never spend it all kind of money. You can definitely burn through 2 million if you want to, especially living in Southern California like I do.
Mm,
But instead, I really devoted myself to learning about personal finance and investing and, being a good steward of that money. And that's what allowed me to retire at 36. Actually, no, I sold the company at 34, retired at 36. I'm already forgetting the years. And
it's
so
all good.
then, so now my net worth is over $5 million. And it's basically that $2 million I started with, just invested, growing annually and living on less than its growth. And now I can basically live indefinitely off of my investments.
And some people might call that not sexy, but I think most people would find that very, very sexy. The fact that you own your story, you command your financial future and your present, that you understand, what's going in and what's going out every month, every year, that you have that like incredible awareness of how money plays a role in your life, and that you're not beholden to it, that you're not enslaved to the money, that you're in control, right? To put it simply. And I think that's really, really attractive to a lot of people. But for me, what was, I think, even more attractive is the fact that you're so transparent about it. And I know that that's part of your tagline, but that's part of the kind of your aura, is that you're so honest and transparent about how you made the money, how much you made. You just put screenshots on Instagram. It's refreshing, and it's probably shocking to some people. How did you come to be that way, so transparent?
I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, partially, I just think that comes naturally to me. I just don't care. I mean, I think some people are naturally private and I'm not. And then I think partially, I think there is a culture of shame and
Mm,
secrecy around money in
yeah.
probably the world, certainly in the US. If you were at a dinner party with some new friends and said, "Hey, let's go around the table and all say how much money we make and how much debt we have," um, people would think you were a pariah. They're like,
Hmm.
how dare you?" But if you said something like, "Hey, let's go around the table and like say what hobbies we enjoy and what foods we hate," they'd be like, "This guy's a good conversation." I mean, probably
Hmm.
it's a little bit of a
Yep.
weird conversation starter either
No,
way,
no.
but so because I think there's this like shame and secrecy around money, I'm just gonna do the opposite. So, for example, when people say millionaire, there are these visions in people's heads about you're evil or it's insanely rich or it's impossible or you have offshore secret accounts or whatever the preconceived notions are. And so I'm just like I said, I'm like, here's a screenshot, this is what my bank account looks like,
Hmm.
this is what I'm investing in, this is where my money goes in, this is where my money goes out. It's very similar to how I was living when I was making $36,000 a year, except with just like some more zeros there, and otherwise it's
Hmm.
essentially the same.
I love that. Well, I mean, actually, I always try to start these episodes asking like, what's the best part of your day or your week? But rather than forcing that question, I wanted to share that I found you, I want to say early, like pre-pandemic or early pandemic, and then I did a multi-year Instagram detox, so I was off, and then I came back recently, but I feel like I've missed some big, things that have happened in your life. So what is it that you care to share about like the last couple of years? What's happened in your business or your personal life that you'd like to share?
Oh, I mean, everything, because this was like a big, so I yeah, I was single for 40 some years of my life, and then I was just talking to um a girl named Andrea, without spoiling it just yet, and I was saying 2 years ago today I was single, no prospects, living alone in a condo, the whole thing. And as of today, I am married, have a stepson, a child who's going to be born in the next few weeks. He's due like in the end of February. We bought a house together, so like all the things happened all at once. And so personally, it's been definitely a gigantic change, advancement, uh,
Wow.
progress for me. And then professionally, I don't know, it's kind of more exciting stuff of the kind of stuff we've been doing, which is like starting companies and things like that.
Well, I think like you listed 4 or 5 major life changes, so quintuple congratulations are
Thank
in
you.
order.
I know, I see like
That's
sometimes I see
amazing.
friends I haven't seen in like a few months and they say congrats.
Yeah.
I'm like, on which one? The house, the
That's
baby, the engagement, the marriage, like,
all
like
of
there's
it.
all, I did
Hey,
all the
man,
things
that's
in Q4.
well, there's that abundance, right? I mean, and it's wonderful when things are going well, right? But I think I would guess that some people find you and resonate with your messages when their finances are in the gutter, right? When they're sort of not doing well financially, and maybe that's when a lot of what your messages resonates with them. I'm not saying that that's the only way, right? Because people might be doing fine, but they want to take their finances to the next level, and I think you speak to that as well. But what are your thoughts about that? It's like, you have all these amazing, abundant things that are happening in your life, but was it always that way? It sounds like not so much, right? Like you were single for a long time, and now you've got all these points of abundance. So what do you think about what kind of people do you attract to your platforms and to Instagram and to Personal Finance Club?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because I'm putting out this like one message, but then everyone who hears it is in infinitely different places, right?
Yeah.
And I definitely hear that sometimes. Like I'll post like an example, like you know, James spends $2,000 on rent, and then someone will comment like $2,000 in rent. That's insane. That's so
Mhm.
unrealistic. And I'm like,
Right.
in which direction? I literally don't know. Do you think it's too cheap? Do you think it's too expensive? It's like literally like
Yes.
the median American like rental income
Yes.
as of
Yes.
today. And I'm literally like, do you think that's expensive or cheap? Because where you live, if you live in San Francisco or San Jose or something, like there's no way you can get that for so cheap. But if you live in Oklahoma, you'd be like, what are you spending $2,000 on?
Yep.
Um, and that's like kind of a silly one just about the price of things. But for sure, like you said, sometimes people are like in a fantastic place. They're like, oh, I finally got that promotion at work. I paid off all my debt. Like have all this excess income. And now perfect time to find Jeremy because I'm like, how do I invest this money and like, retire early like him? And sometimes people are like I get DMs, I'm like, they're like struggling with debt and they
Yeah.
can't make their payments and their career isn't where they want to be. And they're like, hey, you're the money guy. How do I fix this? And I want to help both those types of people. And so it's hard, sometimes to have a message that kind of speaks to
Mm.
everyone wherever they are in their journey.
And despite all that, or because of that, your message is consistent and it's simple and it's clean. And I think it resonates with everybody because money is so, like I said earlier, it's so important to all of us, whether we think it's the root of all evil or it enables us to do meaningful things in our lives. It's there, right? Whether we like it or not. And I just seen how many more people went, like I said, when I came back to Instagram, like you just blew up in the last few years. Was there this is a very close-ended question. Was there a moment, a post where it really blew up, where it was just like, oh wow, this thing is really taking on a life of its own? Was there a moment like that in your experience?
There are some influencers out there who have like the post that they're famous for, and then it changed everything. Mine was definitely more of a grind. Like actually, I've
Yeah,
kind of given up on it now, but I used to chart, daily or weekly followers and growth and all that. And
yeah,
people who haven't seen me in a couple of years like, oh my gosh, you blew up overnight. I was like, not really. It was just really like a daily grind every
yep,
day. I remember early on, probably a month or two into posting, there's a day where I had like, 100 followers and I got those from like begging all my high school friends or like my lifelong list of contacts to follow me.
yeah,
And that got me to 100. And then someone with 5,000 followers shared my post. I was like, oh my God, 5,000 followers. Like,
mm,
and then someone with like 10,000 followers saw that and shared. Then someone with 50,000 followers shares like, oh, and I thought when you had 50,000 followers, I just assumed you were like famous, rich, just Instagram is just, got you on the bank payroll or whatever. And so I like felt a little bit of, and then that day I picked up like 1,000 followers just from
hmm,
like the visibility or whatever. So
yeah,
from 100 to 1,100, I was like, oh, um, but nothing changed. And I
yeah,
eventually, a year later, I had 50,000 followers and nothing changed. No one didn't make any money. No one was giving me
hmm,
money. I wasn't famous. So it's definitely more of a grind than it is like
yep.
a magical overnight miracle.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's ditto. Because I don't have 600,000 followers on Instagram. Nor do I think I have the confidence to handle that many. But I'm glad that you do. So how do you handle the riffraff, the negativity, the sort of, because money can be political too, right? I mean, everything can be political or politicized. How do you handle the meanies, right? The nasty grams? How do you handle that aspect of your sort of slow, not newfound fame on Instagram? How do you handle that aspect?
There are definitely times where I think every human, I hear art or interviews with like much more famous people than me who just turn off their comments or just refuse to look at them just because like
Yeah.
they're just humans to bags of meat, like, reading someone say something mean about them, and it like it burns into your psyche. That said, like,
Yeah.
I think I'm pretty okay with it these days. There's a few things I always remind myself of. One is that everything popular is controversial. Like, there's literally no one on planet Earth. Like, you think of like the most kind, altruistic, whatever,
Hmm.
like Mother Teresa or something. There was gonna be people who like hate Mother Teresa, like, oh
Sure,
no,
sure,
she
sure.
wasn't good, she was actually
Yep.
bad.
Right,
Be
right,
like
right.
Taylor Swift, like, seems like she's just out there doing good work, being nice, and like, no, people hate Taylor Swift. So there's no
And now
there's,
our podcast goes viral because you said people hate Taylor Swift, and
yeah,
and look at that. Now we're both bajillionaires overnight.
okay. But like,
Yeah,
so yeah, there's no path to being like popular that doesn't include like those haters, right?
sure.
And another thing I remember is that, like, no one ever like attacks you who's doing more than you. It's not
Mm,
like it's not like Barack Obama is sliding into my like comments and be like, it wasn't 11% growth, it was 10% growth, you
right,
idiot. It's just like
right,
basement dwellers who like don't even know what they're talking about, who
right.
and they're really just mad, they're jealous or whatever that like they're not doing it. And so they're like
Sure.
trying to cast stones. They're like, oh, if I can bring him down, that brings me up, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
So and it's good for engagement, right? So I feel like, bland oatmeal is not popular. If I'm not getting some people's feathers ruffled, then I'm just
Hmm.
saying nothing at all. And if you're saying nothing at all, then that's good and bad. Like, I think there's bad parts of that where people post really like divisive political nonsense that's
Right.
lie usually, and then you get people fighting, and now we have this like
Yeah.
horrible political landscape that we're in. But for personal
Yeah.
finance, I try to just take a position.
Well, you seem the way that you when you do your videos, the way again, the image that you put out there, and just me hearing you talk, you seem like you're able to digest and metabolize that negativity in a way that serves you and that's healthful for you, and that's what matters most, right? So kudos to you for that. You educate, right? It's very like you give so much value, you give so many tips and insights, and sort of this calming presence. You have also like a really a really soothing voice. Like there's something comforting about listening to you. So I think there's that. The graphics are just I love them. They're simple, but they're easy on the eyes. They're fun. They're like easy. They just really kind of help to communicate this message of simplicity, right? Like don't overcomplicate this ish because it is really that simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. And I just think that it all works together. The point I guess I'm making is it's very you share a lot with the world, but what do you get back from it? Like what either have you learned from people or what have you received from all of these folks over the years?
I mean, uh, don't pay me as too much of an altruistic guy. Definitely, like, I'm doing this because I like it and because I want to. And um, it started when I was, fully retired. Now the whole retired thing is probably a lot less true because I'm starting companies again. Um,
Yeah.
but I was literally like sitting at home, working out, playing video games, traveling, just like no job. When people asked what I did for a living, I would tell them I was unemployed. Um, and so I started this as, a passion project, and it's incredibly fun. And I get to do things like this and get to,
Yeah.
when I have, two employees now, actually now, I don't know how many, but like not that many, like four or something,
Yeah.
um, but I was talking to my two employees at the time and about like goals of Personal Finance Club. And I was like, one of my goals is to get to do experiences that, you know, only, fame, I'm using that in quotes, only fame can bring. And like one of
Mm-hmm.
them, for example, is like, I think it was last year, maybe 2023, a year and a half ago, I was invited to the White House. I literally went to the White
Wow.
House and got a
What?
tour and sat in the Rose Garden and saw
Wow.
Biden speak. And there was like literally the day that like the Israel Hamas war was breaking out. And
Oh,
so
wow.
I didn't actually, he was like too busy to like say hi to everyone.
Yep.
But what like that would have happened otherwise. You can't buy that.
Mm-mm.
I get a lot of it, both like and I guess I'm kind of saying one of like the more outrageous things, but like every day people like send me really nice messages saying like, oh, like this never made sense before, or you changed my life, or crazy stuff like that. So it's like insanely rewarding.
That's amazing. So tell me, more practically, when, because there's this idea of like it's simple and it don't overcomplicate it and it doesn't have to be so hard. But then there's also like a reality check of like you need to get your ish together, right? Like this is, you know, this is the reality. Like you're in debt or you're complicit in this. Yes, the systems above us or around us are complicated and keep us, poor in some ways, but we are complicit in our own realities to a large degree. And so how do you deliver that dose of reality to folks?
I think what you said a few minutes ago is exactly right, which is it's simple but not easy. And there are other things like that. Like I'd say fitness is probably pretty similar to that, where I could probably
Hmm.
on a post-it note, not even writing very small, write down like the 8 things to do to be in really good shape. You know,
Right.
eat eat food, mostly vegetables. Do 45 minutes of fitness every day. Don't drink alcohol, drink water. Um,
Yep.
like, whatever. You could imagine like a pretty short list of like 8 to 10 things that if you like actually stuck that, you're like, oh, if I did those things, I'd be just in incredible shape. Um, and it's not complicated. Nothing I just said was
Yep.
complicated, but it's definitely not easy. Like, before we started recording, you were like, I worked out tomorrow. I was like, that's badass. Because I didn't, because I woke
Mm.
up and like the 3-year-old, my 3-year-old, like woke us up and I had to make breakfast, get ready for school, get ready for this. Like, I could have
Yep.
woken up at 5 a.m. and worked out maybe, but instead I woke up at 7 a.m. and didn't work out.
Mm.
And then, by the time I get home, it's gonna be dark, and then I get to decide if I'm gonna work out and dark or whatever. So it's not easy, right? And the same is true for
Yeah.
personal finance, which is like, I have 2 rules. Live below your means is rule number one. And rule number two is invest early and often. You spend less than you make, you invest the difference. Like that's really simple. Like in concept, if you make $50,000 a year, spend 45. If you make 60, spend 50, whatever it is. And then
Hmm.
with what you're not spending, invest. But just like the fitness thing, just work out every morning. Doesn't mean it's easy, right? Like, oh, just live below your means. Well, the electric bill just came in. Like, in fact, I like looked at my electric bill this morning. We're on pace for like $400 gas on the electric bill this month. I'm like, oh my God, like
Yep.
that's like a ton of money. That's like it's a large
It is.
purchase that I just
Yep.
have to pay, right? Um, and so what do you do about that? Like, well, I could try to like optimize my energy use, or I could uh, you know, increase my income, or I could live more frugally other places. And, you know, these are challenging things. For example, like Amazon is so easy. Like, man, like sometimes I lose something in my house and then I'm like, I don't want to look for it. I just want to buy an Amazon. Like it's so sick. That's like literally in my house somewhere. But rather than
Yep.
like start looking through drawers, I just gonna just click it on my phone and have it show up. I'm like, and so I think people often replace the harder work with convenience. Um,
Hmm.
Almost everything we got by, we could probably buy used. And I'm like a big offer up Facebook Marketplace guy. I just kind of bought a new home gym. It was really tempting. It's like, oh, it's only like $900. I could go buy it on, you know, buy it on the internet and have it delivered and be brand new and yada yada yada. But then I was like just looking through OfferUp for a few days, found one, or found a few of them, offered 2 people $300. One of them said no in a very mean way, and the other one said sure. And so I went and got the one that said yes, and then I saved
Yep.
$600, and that's like a month and a half of free expensive
Hmm.
utilities right there.
Oh
I
yeah.
just didn't spend. So yeah, I know I'm just kind of ranting. You kind of asked like how do I
That's
convey that?
awesome.
And I don't know. I think I just try to give good examples and it's I guess I try to use inspiration rather than shame, being like, you spend too
Sure.
much, you should be not. I'm like, hey, look, you don't have to do this, but if you make 60 and you spend 50, you're a millionaire. If you make 60 and you spend 65, you're going to be on Squid Games trying to pay off your debt one of these years.
Oh, I love that show. But yes, I hear you there. Well, you do give really pragmatic, really real examples like that. Just feel like they're happening to you, like in the moment, or you've experienced them yourself. You're also very honest. I mean, there's these things that you don't really get when you're like. There's this idea when you're working with finance analysts or not finance analysts, but financial advisors, right? Like you feel like are they like tricking me? Are they like trying to, are they working in my best interest? But the information that you're giving out on Instagram, like I was following you for like a year, and like you didn't make a dime directly off of me. I didn't buy anything from you, but boy, oh boy, did I share. Like I just thought the content was so on point and so refreshing. But you captured my attention, and I resonated with everything because it was simple, it felt honest, it was consistent, it was like real, and it wasn't complicated, right? Because the last thing you want to hear when you're in debt, or when your company is underpaying you, or when you have to make a really challenging decision between do I rent or do I buy or do I do this or that, is complicated information. You want to simplify your life, and that's what you do very, very well.
Thank you. That's very kind.
Yeah. Tell me about, so you kind of said like retired, but now you're like unretired or retired-ish. I don't know why I thought that, but I'm not a quite a minimalist, but I'm a minimal-ish. Like I try to be. So with the example where you're saying like you lost something and you can't find it, like yes, I bet you there are times in my life where I would go to the store and buy another one, but I don't know, something about me, because I grew up on a farm in Poland, resourcefulness. So I feel like part of the gamification of my own life is let me try to find a way to see if I can survive without that thing, or find another way to make that thing using other ingredients. And I'm a baker and a cook, a pretty good baker, if I may be so humble. And so, like, if a recipe calls for, Nutella and it's midnight and everything's closed or I don't want to go out, I will find a way to either, oh look, I have some hazelnuts, or if the unlikely situation, I'll see, oh, I have some almonds, and I'll make it from scratch, because that's the sort of nerdy, like resourceful, centered person that I am, and that gives me joy. And I save a crap ton of money along the way. So that's how I've gamified my life in a way. I make it fun, and I save money along the way. I save 100% of that. It's like all these promos, like save 25%, save 40%. I'm like, I'm saving 100% because I'm not spending anything, and that's helped me, save a little bit more money as I think about my retirement. Not at 36 because I'm 40, but sooner rather than later. So as I share that, does that anything come up, or any thoughts on that piece?
Yeah, I think that's a really good habit. And I think that one of the misconceptions around wealth is that rich people are like big spenders.
Mm,
And because I think that's what we learn as a kid a lot of times. A fancy car drives by and your parents are like, oh, the Joneses must be doing well. But that's not true. What that fancy car means is the Joneses just spent a lot of money. We don't know anything about what the Joneses have left. In fact, a lot of times when you see these cars, they
yeah.
represent massive debt. Um,
Mm,
and so we kind of learn these wrong lessons about what spending means. Spending doesn't mean wealth.
oh,
Wealth is what's left over after spending. And like one funny story about that is I was at this like beach house. I used to coach beach volleyball, and afterwards I went to like this beach house, and it was like a house, and there's like a second house behind, and it wasn't like $1 billion place, but it was like and it was the family's, like, it wasn't their primary home. It was like they're
mm,
like, and they lived in San Diego, so they had like a beach home in San Diego. Um, and so we were like sitting on the like the porch of this beach home, and then we were sitting on like this little fire pit thing they had there, and then the dad of the family who bought the fire pit and was part of the family that bought the house was saying how he had just bought the fire pit on OfferUp, like he had bought it used. And I was like, look at this guy's buying like multi-million-dollar like
mm-hmm.
beach real estate, but his mentality is still like, I'm not going to waste money. He's like, why would I buy a
Yep.
new fire pit when I could buy a perfectly good used one, because a new one's going to look used a week later anyway, so you might as well just clean up a used one and have it look new. And so I think, your mentality
Mm,
there um, around minimalist-ish or minimalist or whatever you said, and not being wasteful. I
yeah.
think I think that's a really wealthy mentality, even though, you say it was formed in the seeds of a farm in Poland. I do think that it just speaks to not being wasteful, and it speaks to um, saving. And I think that's how most millionaires are. For sure, I assume there are some rappers out there who got rich extremely quickly and spent all their money, and they're still rich or whatever. But I
Mm-hmm.
don't think that's a typical millionaire. I think a typical millionaire has your mindset where it's like, hey, let's not just go waste money more Nutella. Even though that's like a very small decision, like it's
Yes.
$4 or
Right.
whatever. Actually, I don't know. I don't know what Nutella costs anymore, so don't. don't.
In this economy,
Yeah,
boy, in this
exactly.
economy,
Maybe
who knows,
14
right?
bucks. I don't know. Have
Yeah.
you seen the hazelnut price? But yeah, I think that's a great mentality. I think it is a wealthy mentality.
Yeah, and also I think it's the creative in me, right? Like I'm building a business, but I'm a creative soul, and I like to create something from, well, not nothing, but it feels that way sometimes, to just kind of rearrange. And it's the same kind of sensibility I use when I take photographs. I see things that other people miss, and it's the same thing. It's like, oh, we ran out of X. I'm like, well, you have all the sort of constituent or compositional ingredients of that thing. We could make that in 5 minutes. People are like, oh, they're not used to that, and we're not used to
Yeah.
that as a society because the convenience factor. And I get it. It's less about judgment because I'm part of that society, but it is an observation, and without vigilance, we're never going to get ahead of it, right? Um, what do you think about this? So this idea that, like, you're either born with this frugality or you have to go through some like tragic, horrible like rut. Otherwise, you're not gonna, you know what I mean? Like, what's the other impetus, right? Is there another impetus? Is it just like someone who's just like casually dabbling and like, I'm good, but I want to get better? Maybe, but I feel like most people are either born with frugality and this as a value, or it's taught by parents, society, or their village, or they hit rock bottom and then they seek answers. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's one of the hardest things that I face as like an educator, which is, I talk about my two rules. One, live below your means, and two, invest early and often. People who struggle with the second one is incredibly easy. It's like my favorite thing because it's so easy, which is like they're like, I don't know how to invest. Investing is a scary,
Mm-hmm.
crazy,
Yeah.
complicated, terrifying place. I was like, guess what? It's actually pretty simple. Just click these buttons and then leave it alone, and you're gonna beat
Yes.
all the other nonsense you hear. Like, and then people once they like you said you mentioned earlier you're talking to financial advisors, you're like, oh, I feel like this guy's trying to trick me into something. When you have when you tell people the truth, it's amazing because there's a ring to it, right? And people are like, ah, okay, got it. He's not trying to trick me into something. Now this is clicking. Now I understand. And so that part's easy. Teaching people how to invest is easy. Teaching people how to be frugal is not easy, for what you just said, because like someone who is a natural spender and just doesn't want to make their own Nutella and doesn't want to look for the tool and just wants to buy on Amazon and just like, it's very hard for words to come out of my mouth to be like, no, no, no. And you're right. It does kind of seem like a natural thing. Like I wasn't born on a farm in Poland, but I was raised extremely frugally. Like
Mm.
from my earliest memories, don't spend, you can't spend this, can't upgrade to this, can't do, like paying for convenience was like absolutely forbidden in my house. You could never pay for parking, never pay for an upgrade, for a better seat, for, it's like you had to do it the
Yeah.
absolute cheapest way, and that was it. And still to this day, I find myself, struggling with that. Like, my wife will like order delivery for. It's like, you can't order delivery. Like, I'll pick it up. I'm like, let me like, no, no. I'm like, I'm 44 years old and like, have, like, net worth of over $5
Yeah.
million. I'm like, no, let me go pick it up. We don't want to waste the money. And she's like, no, it's like free delivery. I was like, no, it's not free. It's baked in the price. Like, I'll like,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, so the answer is I don't know. I mean, I think there are good books on the topic. Like Millionaire Next Door, I think is a good one that kind of like really um beats this point home over and over, which is like the millionaires aren't the spenders, they're the frugal, they're the
Yeah.
simple, they're the savers. And so, you know, again, I don't know. I don't know how to turn a spender into a saver, but I do think that um a person can change if they want to. Like a
Sure.
person who's living in debt and says, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to
Yeah.
build wealth. They can change. And um, it is a kind of a something that we often learn as a child. So it's hard to change.
That's amazing. Yeah. And I feel like because it's so deeply rooted, there's got to be a really meaningful experience. So I'm going to use the Nutella example, but it really applies. I think I'll invite the listeners to really kind of think how it applies to your life. But if I have friends who don't know how to cook or don't care about saving money, or they don't care about that stuff, and I bring them over and we make Nutella from scratch together, and then they taste of it and they're like, wow, Matt, we just made alchemy, we just made magic, right? Sort of liquid gold, or viscous, gooey gold. They realize like there's agency there. Like, you can create this. You don't have to rely on corporations for every little convenience, or for every little thing. You can create some of these things. Obviously, you have to get the hazelnuts and some other ingredients, but there's a beauty in this idea of like take a moment. It's meditative. It slows the world down, right? Like you're not thinking about all the things you have to do and your typical anxiety inducing tasks when you're making Nutella for the first freaking time because it's an exciting experience. It puts you back into this idea of like this childlike sense of wonder,
Yeah.
and that's really what I do. I think that's why people love working with me as a coach is because yeah, public speaking and executive leadership, communication, all that fun stuff, it's tapping into all the goodness that we lost when we were kids, that society knocked out of us. And then, we develop addictions, we develop bad habits, we use spending as a salve, as a band-aid, as you already know, with many of your clients and people you've impacted. Spending is a lot of like a band-aid for a problem that they're not addressing. Do you not have confidence because your career is in the gutter? Do you not know what you want to do with your life? Are you single or are you in a terrible relationship that's making you spend even more? Like there are so many things that has nothing to do with money, right? But it has everything to do with money. So that's how I see it as a communication and career coach.
Yeah. I like that. I also, you kind of said how like you can learn that, right? Like someone who didn't know they could buy or couldn't know they could make Nutella, that seemed like a very foreign, even to me, I'm like, the concept of making Nutella seems insane to me.
It's
But
crazy.
but now that you're saying a lot, I was like, yeah, right. You're probably grinding some nuts. There's probably some like confectioner's
Yeah.
sugar or something. There's probably
Yeah.
some like chocolate something or and butter. I don't know, but you're right. You could probably get pretty darn close, or maybe even better. You're like, oh, actually, this non-preservative
Mm-hmm.
filled
Oh
version
yeah.
is actually much better, right? And I've
Yeah,
heard,
because we could talk about healthcare costs too, right? And that's a
oh
whole
my
other,
gosh.
session. So,
Yeah, that could be a whole
man,
series. But frugality, I think, is also something that can be learned, right? I think what you often just see in pop culture is like, just do it the easy way, get your phone, buy it on Amazon, whatever. I remember a
yeah.
few years ago, not with my wife, but with a different girlfriend, there's a part of, I think like her car that was broken. She's like, oh, like, let's go to the dealership. I was like, the dealership? Are you out of your mind? They're going to replace the
Right.
whole door and charge you $2,000. I was like, it's just this little latch. Like, we went to the
Mm-hmm.
junkyard and we walked down the aisles. We like found, we took some tools. We like walked down the aisles. We found the same car as hers. It was like a little window latch or something. Like, unscrewed it, took it to the front, and they charged us like, $2 or something, and then screwed into her thing, and it was perfect. And until that's maybe a little bit less romantic than homemade Nutella, but it's I still think like frugality, whether it's buying a car part in the junkyard or
Yeah.
you know planning your meals in a Costco, buying in bulk, there's
Yeah.
like all this part of frugality that's like, there's another personal finance writer called Mr. Money Mustache, and he basically says this is
Mm. Yeah.
a muscle that you have to train like anything, and the untrained muscle is sitting on the couch, swiping on your phone. The trained muscle is like, planning, being thoughtful, and you can dramatically decrease your expenses that way. But it's work and it's practice.
You actually answered this question in many different ways throughout our conversation, but the question that I wanted to ask you, the theme of season two, is what do people get wrong or about you? What do people sort of misperceive? Any additional thoughts that you'd like to underscore?
You know, when I'm when someone asks what I do, I never really know what to say. It's not like a simple job like a firefighter or something that people
Or a
understand. So
Nutella maker?
Nutella maker, I know I wish that'd be a really much more fun conversation starter, but um, I say that like I'm in finance or I'm an influencer or, like, and these are the words
Whoa.
that I hate, right? Because it's just like,
Yes.
oh, you're one of them. You're a
Yeah.
money grubbing,
Yeah.
bikini wearing, whatever. And to some degree, I think they're right. I think there's a lot of like sharks in finance that
Mhm.
aren't looking out for what's best for people. And I think that there's probably some very vapid influencers who are just trying to get followers to, like live a life of luxury or whatever.
Mhm.
And so like I don't fault them for having those preconceived notions, but I do think that like it's still an important um personal finance is still an important lesson. And
Yeah.
social media is where people's eyeballs are oftentimes. And so that's why I'm doing it. And so I think what people get wrong is that like you can do this hopefully in a, you know, moral and high integrity way where you're basically teaching good things about finance and you're
Mm-hmm.
on social media for a good reason, not to say don't make a clickbaity headline every now and again or
Yeah.
fall for some of the traps, but yeah, I try to do it the right way.
And then, but then the message, the clickbait is to get to read the content, and then the content is rather balanced. I mean, it says, hey, if you do this is what you can expect. You can also do Y, X or Y or Z, and this is what you can expect. So you tend not to push people in a certain way. You might say, hey, I'm biased because of this, or this is what I tried and this is what worked. But you're usually what I like is that it's very A and B. Like it's almost like an A or B test. It's like these are your main options. These are the most common instruments or options that are disposable, and this is what tends to happen. And it's not about judgment, right? Because I think for me, the post that resonated was about like, should you rent or should you buy? And that was very polarizing for people. But you weren't judging. You're like, hey, look, whatever is good for you is good for you, but just be aware of all these other costs and all these expanding the way of what it means to own or to rent, and that there are hidden costs and sort of non-financial costs. So you expand people's awareness. That's what you do. You really expand it.
Thank you. It's so funny because when you say that, what like talking about the haters in the comments, like that's not what people say in the comments. People say in the comments like, "How dare you speak out against owning a home? You you're gonna throw your money away, you idiot! You don't know what you're
Wow.
talking about." And I'm like, hey, you can own a home, like, but don't be mad at me that I'm telling you there's going to be maintenance
Yeah.
costs, there's going to be cost of mortgage interest, there's going to be cost of insurance, there's going to be realtor fees, there's going to be unexpected expenses that pop up. And
Mhm.
and all those things I mentioned aren't paying down the principal, aren't an investment, right? And so people like don't talk about it, but my point isn't like owning a home is bad. I'm like, go into this, like you said, with eyes wide open. For
Yeah.
sure, owning a home is an option. It makes more sense for a lot of people, but at least don't just be like, okay, because a little bit of my money is going towards principal, it's the only option. Everything else is wrong. Like, nope, that's definitely not true. And so it's just about giving giving options and shining light on the
Yeah.
things that a lot of people don't want to talk about.
In some ways, some posts I'd say that your posts are so anti-polarizing that people are so used to being polarized that they almost create it for them. They hunger for it, so they just make stuff up. I mean,
Uh,
also people,
Maybe.
not everyone's at a certain wavelength, right? Like if you're healthy and you're good with your life, you're gonna hopefully share that goodness and that energy and that time and maybe money, your insights, your mentorship with other people to lift other people up. If your life is in shambles, your chances are you're wasting or spending your energy, right, tearing other people down, and that's just the way that it is. And my invitation to anybody who's in I guess the latter camp is, I wish for you to either experience a tragedy that will open your eyes up, or ideally avoid that tragedy and just listen to people who are smarter and kinder and more thoughtful and more generous than you, and follow their path of goodness and charity and mentorship and just being a good person. Because too many, like you said, like backseat jerks or basement jerks type of thing, and it's not a good look. It's certainly not a masculine look. It's very, I find it very emasculating for people when they're so insecure. But I have so many other questions, but I want to be mindful of your time, because time is money, right? That's also true, right? The more you wait, the earlier you invest, the more that piggy bank will grow. Tell me just specifically about what are those two things that you offer? There's the Personal Finance Club, and I recently learned about Nectarine. What can you tell us about both of those?
Yeah, so Personal Finance Club is just my personal finance education brand, I guess. It's where I
Hmm.
teach about living below your means and investing and how to do these things. I started that a little over 6 years ago now. And along the years, like what you said earlier was just so on the ball because people would say, hey, whenever I talk to a financial advisor, I like need to take a shower afterwards because I went in asking about how to choose a 401k and pay off some debt, and they tried to sell me insurance. Should I be buying insurance? Like, what was up with that? And, my answer to them is like, that wasn't a financial advisor. That was an insurance salesman. And he just had financial advisor on his business card because that's not illegal to do. Um, and,
Yeah,
and they said, okay, well, how do I find a good financial advisor? And my answer was like, you should pay someone a flat fee without them earning commissions or managing your money for an annual assets under management fee. Um, and they said, okay, that sounds good. Yeah, I just want to pay a flat fee. And then they said, how do I find one of those? And my answer was, I have no idea. They're really hard to find. I know there are a few that do it. They're relatively few, but there's like, a few good ones. And so, 2 years ago, my team and I started Nectarine, which is a flat fee financial advice marketplace where you can go to hellonectarine.com. Thank you for the plug. And click find an advisor, and you can see all the prices. You can see their calendars. You can see their expertise. You can filter. You can book. You can pay online. You can get on a Zoom, and then that's it. There's no commissions. There's no sales pitch. There's no recurring fees. There's no assets under management fees. They don't manage your money, and so it's so funny. People have such a bad taste in their mouth from the financial advice
Hmm.
industry. We'll get questions like, "Hey, could one of your financial advisors like actually like look at my 401k and like help me choose what to invest in?" Like it's some impossible ask, and we're like, "Yes, definitely they can." And they're not going to try to sell you insurance along the way either. They're just going to give you their decade of expertise and look at your options and help you figure it out. So that's kind of like our big project we're working on right now, and it's at hellonectarine.com. It's going great. I think I shared with you before we started recording that I think this month we're only halfway through January of 25 when we're recording this. I think we're on pace this month to have the best month of any business I've ever owned, including the one I sold for $5 million. And so January is a very good time for personal finance. So I think a lot just like
Yes.
gym memberships and fitness
Yeah.
stuff, people are getting their finances in order in January. But still, it's exciting that's going really well.
That's amazing. And it's a win-win, right? Like the idea is that your wealth is increasing, but you're doing it by lifting other people up or out of their, financial potholes or whatever you want to call it. So I think that to me is a win-win. And it's why I, as a career coach and a communication coach, don't have any qualms anymore. I used to of asking for the rates that I ask because I see that the person lands a better job or they get a promotion or they stay at their level because they're fine there, they're happy. But this is the first meeting that they have where they're not anxious. And I'm like, how many decades have you been holding on to that? Right. Like I'm not a therapist, but like these are tips and techniques that help you speak and hold your power in the room and ask thoughtful questions and share interesting stories. And like for 40 or 50 years before that, you were not able to communicate freely and powerfully and concisely. And now you can because you tapped into what was already inside you. But I helped you along as a coach. That's what I do. It's what I have to do. So I realized that I will gladly take your money, but you're going to get something for that. You're going to get your 10x ROI or whatever, like it's going to be an impactful thing on your life. But I wasn't there for years, right? Only recently, as I'm now in my 40s, did I realize like I have that ability, I have that skill, superpower, and I can share that with the world and make some money off of that. So that feels like a win-win to me. But
Yeah.
enough about me. I want to
Did you just
ask
turn
you,
40? I feel like you're
yeah,
you're
just
you're
a couple weeks
wincing every
ago.
time you say 40. Oh, happy
I
birthday.
know it was just 2 weeks ago. I just had my annual physical. Everything's good.
You
So,
look baby young. I wouldn't have guessed you're 40,
um,
so
the question actually, I have one question for you. Last is it could be the Zoom camera, it could be you're flexing, I don't know, but you seem healthier, you seem more fit. I haven't seen you in on Instagram because I've been off of it for a while. How has the last couple of years been in terms of not just your bank account, but all the other metrics of health and success in your life?
I mean for sure like family relationship, home is great. I spent the weekend like kind of cleaning up and building out my home gym. My
Oh,
own
this recently?
like yeah, like 3 days ago.
Oh,
Well, because
nice.
we bought a new home, we moved into it about 6 weeks ago, and it's just been like chaos.
Mm-hmm.
Boxes and you know
Yep.
buying stuff
Life.
and whatever, and so like I feel like we're starting to get to like the 80% done where it's like starting to feel like things are in place and stuff, which feels great. Yeah, my own fitness journey is kind of like, they say there's like these yo-yo dieters, and I was like, I'm not a yo-yo dieter, but I kind of am in a sense because I'll have a sense where I'll have like a streak where I'm like, you're like in the habit of working out. And so like,
Yeah.
and then when you're in the habit of working out, at least I naturally feel more likely to be in the habit of eating healthy. And so I'll like be working out almost every day, and I'll like be drinking protein shakes and like, avoiding sugar and like doing all the things.
Mm.
But then life happens and I miss a few workouts, then it becomes really easy to miss workouts. And then it becomes hard to do a workout. And then you're like, well, since I'm not working out, I might as well eat a gigantic big cookie or whatever. And so I
Yummy.
definitely have like ebbs and flows like that. Um, but yeah, it's it's a challenge. And generally I'm in pretty good shape. I was a college athlete and I'm thin looking. And so people I say, Jeremy, you could never be fat, but like I could be. And I'm like, it's only because I constantly feel like I'm part of the struggle.
Yeah.
Um, to stay fit. So that's my challenge.
Mm, mm. It's a challenge for me too. I've gamified it slash like I love nature and I love being outside. So I run outdoors. I love to dance to really new music. I love EDM and Afro beats and all music. I mean, pretty much all music that's danceable. And really, any music. I can dance to any music. So the point is, I find those moments of joy, and it's not like a formal workout, but I'm dancing, I'm moving. Movement is life, movement is health. So I might not be as lean or I guess bulky as I want to be, but I am very happy with the amount of movement I have because I associate it with really fun things like nature and dance and joy. So that's how I've sort of made it easier for me and less effortful over the years. And now in my middle age, so
I know. I know. It was a few years ago for me too, where I'm like, I think I'm officially, I keep doubling
wow.
my age. I'm like, well, if I'm not middle aged yet, I better live to 100.
Yeah, I
Um,
don't feel it. I feel great, but apparently I've been middle aged since like my mid 30s, right? So,
yeah, I know. I think I was around
um,
35 when someone's like, you're middle aged. I'm like, no, what?
that's not crazy. Um, you're an open book. You're transparent. One of the many reasons I appreciate you as a human being. Maybe a question for me. Do you have any questions for me that you want to ask before we part
I
ways?
do. I'm going to
Ooh.
ask you that awkward dinner question because I'm a money guy, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that when you're walking on the street, you don't know what people's money situation are. And I think a lot of people have that shame and secrecy around. They're like, oh, I have some credit card debt, or oh, I have student loans, or I have this, and like I feel like everyone feels bad. And so I'm going to ask the
Yeah.
awkward question. Now, I want to ask you about your personal debt situation. Do you
Ah.
have debt? How much? What
Okay.
kind of debt? Did you pay it off? Are you paying
Uh-huh.
it off?
Uh-huh.
How do you feel about debt? Do you think that debt's life? That you need to be in debt to live?
Oh
That
boy.
that's how people buy things, or do you not like debt? Tell me what your views are on debt.
Um, well, thank you for that. I don't have, well, I have plenty of debt, right? Like I have a mortgage. That's massive debt, right?
That is
Um,
debt.
that's debt, but I consider that healthy debt because I'm working towards an asset, so I have good debt. Right now I pay off my credit cards, so I have maybe $400, 400, $400. For the next cycle, I already paid the last statement, so never carry, never. I always pay in full. Um, I used to have debt. A couple of times in my 20s and 30s, I absolutely had credit card debt. I was always able to pull myself out largely through my own doing because I'm like trying to pull myself up by the bootstraps, but sometimes with help. But like the third time, I was like, enough is enough. I don't need it. Actually, I wasn't spending crazily. Like I don't have fancy cars. I don't really enjoy driving. I see it as a necessary evil, but I don't have fancy clothes. I spend my money on trips and experiences, and sometimes I pair it with conferences and work. But I've been to 30 plus countries. It's amazing. But the point is, it's not like I was spending crazy amounts of money. I just wasn't earning as much and living in the tri-state area of New York City is ridiculously expensive. Even if you're frugal like me, it's just insanely expensive. And so really where I've been investing most of my energy now is sort of maybe I've tightened my belt a little bit, but I've actually worked at business development and marketing and building my confidence and doing all the things that I preach. And I've been applying that to my own life in recent years, and it's showing dividends. I'm making more money, and that's exciting because I'm not excited to like spend more money, right? Like I'm making more money and I want to just sort of maintain. Like, yes, having more money will enable me maybe an additional trip here or there, but I'm not going to try to like, if I became a bajillionaire, like I would never want to buy a private jet. Like that's not interesting to me. And yet, I have to be reminded that money and power can corrupt or it can cloud your judgment. It can change your neurochemistry according to some science. So I don't know that for sure. I can nicely say, from my very middle class sort of seat here, like that I wouldn't be changed by money. But if I suddenly were making, $1 million a year, I don't know if I'd become a different person. I hope not. But I don't know that for sure because I'm not there. I can't put myself in those shoes quite fully. So that's my non-answer answer.
No, that's a good
No,
answer.
no credit card debt, thank God. And I
I
plan to keep
mean,
it that way.
I think that's a really wealthy mentality, which is, yeah, you can only, wealth building is that double-edged sword. One is like decreasing expenses, and the other is increasing income. And you can only
Yeah.
decrease expenses so far. I mean, decreasing expenses is powerful because for every dollar you don't spend is like earning like a dollar 30 or dollar 40 because
Mm-hmm.
earnings are taxed. But also
Yeah.
there's no limit to earnings where there is limit
Yeah.
to savings. You can't live on a dollar a year. There's some lower limit. So doing both those things, and then another thing you said was really powerful was when you do have that increase in income, resist the urge to instantly increase your cost of living. And so I think what a lot of Americans do is like they get a 10% raise, and they get a 12% like taste for finer things or whatever, and then
Mm.
then you realize, that's how you end up making $250,000 a year and being in debt and living paycheck to
Mm-hmm.
paycheck because it's
Yeah.
just so easy to spend. And so,
Sure.
keep that frugal mentality, increase your income, but then, spend a little bit more, like you said. The point of money is not to die with the most. The point of money is to like live the richest life. But I think
Yes.
what most people do is they spend beyond their means, and then they're stressed about life, and they're paying extra in debt and yada yada yada. So I love your answer.
I appreciate you more than you know. Um, the just thank you. I mean, I actually am a liar. I said like half an hour, please, and then look at us talking for uh so long, but I enjoyed every minute of it. Thank you for all you are and all you do, and I look forward to sharing this episode with the world.
It is my pleasure, David. Thank you so much for having me. It was an honor.
My homework assignment for you is no, I'm kidding. I always do that for some of my clients. It's like have a great day, enjoy your life, right? Be empowered. But maybe just maybe when your kid grows up a little bit, you'll be making Nutella on Sundays. Who knows?
That's a good idea. I made dinner with my 3-year-old last night, and it was
Oh, you're
amazing.
ahead of the pack. You're already doing it. You don't need me to tell you what to do. I
Yeah.
appreciate you so much, Jeremy. Thank you so much. Take
Thank you,
care.
David. You too.
Bye.